The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone, and welcome to our new live webcast, License Models, Spicing Up the Mix. Join us each month for new powerful messages, technical tips, and success stories that will leave you inspired and ready to get your protection, licensing, and security techniques another step closer to perfection. At WIBU-SYSTEMS, we empower software publishers and intelligent device manufacturers with cutting-edge technologies, new business models, and tailor-made consulting training. Let us help you upgrade, optimize, and automate your entire license lifecycle management so you can focus on monetizing your business at a higher level. My name is Daniela Previtali, Global Marketing Director of WIBU-SYSTEMS, and I am delighted to have you here with us today. We are joined by Rüdiger Kugler, VP Sales and Security Expert, and Caster Hopner, Professional Services, both from the headquarters of WIBU-SYSTEMS. Over the last decades, licensing has surged to become a true business enabler for any digital asset, with the advent of cloud computing supercharging its potential. However, not all use cases are born equal, and a servitization approach can make all the difference for a successful impact on a global scale. CodeMeter supports a vast array of licensing schemes, giving software developers the ability to offer users as much freedom as they want without compromising on security. Some housekeeping we need to take care of before we start. For everyone who's joining us today, I want to remind you that we will be reserving some time at the end of the session for Q&A, and I'd like to invite you to submit any question you have in the live chat box. This session is being recorded, and a link to the replay will be posted directly to you in the next couple of days. And don't forget, stay with us throughout the live session for your chance to win 3 hours of free CodeMeter consultation from the most brilliant minds at our company. At the end of the webinar, a new tab in your browser with 3 simple quiz questions will show up. You can submit one choice for each multiple answer question. We will draw the winner from among those who reply correctly and notify them at the time of the replay announcement. Please also note that the winner is excluded from all subsequent prize draws of 2020. Without further ado, I'll pass it over to Rüdiger. The floor is yours.
Welcome to our session of licensing models with CodeMeter License Central. My name is Carsten Höppner, and I'm happy to show you how it's done with CodeMeter and WIBU-SYSTEMS together with my colleague Rüdiger Kugler, and I will do the start now. So let's start with some basics of CodeMeter. The motto is integrate once, deliver many, but what does that actually mean? That means that the software is once protected, or let's say prepared, in the way that each different kind of licensing model can be applied on it. So, for example, we have one customer that is served by a specific licensing scheme with, for example, some basic modules as single user licenses and has additional modules. So for this example, this customer could have some license for these additional modules expiring after 30 days. But the same software should be able to talk or to deal with a licensing system that provides a different handling. For example, with additional modules as subscription, or the basic module as a subscription licensing, and additional modules with a different subscription, so that they can be treated independently. Or as these 2 examples, we can see several other similar treatments with different customers and different licensing models. So in the next slides, we will treat different versions and we'll talk about how do we have to configure the licenses inside the system in order to achieve exactly what was explained here.
Yeah, hello also from my side. My name is Rüdiger Kögler, and let's check about a CodeMeter licensing system. So when we create a license, we have the option to store a license either in a CodeMeter dongle, in a CM-ACT license file, or in a CM Cloud container. So a dongle is a secure hardware element, so it's a smart card chip inside. The most used version of CodeMeter is a CM stick, which is a USB-based dongle, but it's also available as SD card, CF card, micro SD card, CFast card, and as ASIC. The CM-ACT license is an encrypted license file which is bound to the properties of the endpoint, so bound to the properties of the computer where the license is used. And the CM Cloud container is a container which resists in the cloud, in the WIBU cloud, and which is bound to a specific user. So the user has his login credentials. It's a credential file which is automatically created user identification and a password. And with this credential file, he can connect to the cloud and then can use the licenses from the cloud directly on his local device. And additionally, there's also a license server, and with the license server, it is possible that licenses can be shared in a local area network, meaning that there's a license server with a dongle at a license server or with a CM-ACT license at a license server. By the way, it's also possible with a CodeMeter cloud container. And all the licenses are then in the container on the server side. Only the binding of the server, so the properties of the server, are relevant in case of the CM-ACT license. And then multiple users can use the license simultaneously. So for instance, if I have 20 potential users which can use the license, then I say, but not more than 10 will use it at the same time. So I'm purchasing a 10 user floating network license, put the 10 licenses on the license server, and 10 user can use it. And if the 11th user tries to use it, he gets the message, sorry, all licenses are already in use, please wait or buy more licenses. And if one of the 10 user stops starting the license or the software, in this case, the license is free and the next user can use the license. So it counts simultaneously use of the license. And I told you a license can be stored in a container. And Carsten, how does a license entry look like?
Exactly. The first question should be, we're talking about a license and about containers, but how is it composed? So the first thing we get clear is that a license entry, so one valid license, is defined by the combination of a firm code and a product code. So let's check this one. Here we see, for example, the firm code as what Rüdiger was referring to as a container. And this firm code is issued by WIBU-SYSTEMS, so by us, and contains the specific product codes which define the options, modules, or features that the ISV, or well, the software vendor is defining. That means that when the ISV decides different features, we will see it later, some examples, then the ISV is completely free in defining which product code to use in order to create his structure. Completely free is only limited by, as we see here, the 32 unsigned integer limitation. So we have like up to 4 billion product codes available. But then the question is, where are the limits for a firm code? And there it is to say that up to 2,000 product items can fit into a CodeMeter container. Later, a product code, or let's say on a deeper layer, a product code can be defined by specific product item options, or better said, can carry product item options. And with these product item options, we get the chance to define all our preferences for how the licenses are working. Let's say the restrictions, when it's valid, when it expires, and so on.
Yes, Carsten spoke of the product item options, which can be used to realize our license models. And let's see an overview of the product item options. So we have in the sum 21 different product item options which can be used and which can be combined with each other. One is the text, which means it's just a description of the license name. So it's my sample notepad in our case. The license quantity, which we will dive into more details in a few seconds. Then time-based options like license from, license to, some version-based stuff like feature map and maintenance period. At the end, there are some data fields like user data, protected data, hidden data, secret data, some security relevant options like encryption rate, like access password, and so on. And today, for this webinar, we have picked the most used, so the best practice options. And here we have the license quantity, expiration time, module items, unit counter, and the license transfer options. And let's start simply with the license quantity. What can we do with the technical product item option license quantity? The license quantity is a number that we write into a license, into a product item. And it's a counter for concurrent usage. It means you allocate a license and you free a license. And if you have 10 licenses, then you can do the allocation 10 times. If 11th one comes, you get the message, sorry, all 10 are used. And if you free one license, then you can allocate another license. So and this is how it works in general. So it's a counter of simultaneously used licenses. Typically, it's used for concurrent licensing, so for floating network licenses. It does not only count the concurrent use on a network, it also can count the concurrent use on a standalone computer. So for instance, if we speak of an ASP.NET software as a service application, in this case, it is running on the or as one instance, maybe on the server. And then when you want to count the amount of parallel users, you need to do this from the same machine, and you have no users which are running CodeMeter runtimes on different local machines. In this case, it's also possible to count the concurrent usage on one standalone machine, in this case on one server. There are 5 modes how to access such a license. The most used are the 3 user limit, no user limit, and station share. With user limit, every instance which is using a license counts as one license. So let's assume I'm using user limit in my application, and my user is starting the application on the first computer, and I have the 10 licenses. Then 1 license is accessed, and 9 licenses are free. I'm starting the software on the same computer a second time. And due to the fact user limit, this second start of the software also counts as a separate license. So I have 2 licenses in use, and 8 licenses are still available. Of course, next one, 3 and 7, and so on. If we speak of the no user limit option, I have my 10 licenses. I will start my software. It will check if a license is there, but it will not allocate a license. So I have 0 in use, and 10 are still free, because the no user limit just touches the license, but it doesn't use the license. Maybe you will ask yourself, for what do we need a no user limit option? There are 2 interesting use cases. One use case is you have an executable which includes a lot of DLLs, libraries, and you want to license the executable with user limit, but the DLLs should simply work even if the license is already in use, and even if there is the license already accessed by the executable. And in this case, you would protect the executable with user limit, and all the DLLs with no user limit. The second option is to that we have a software like a license manager which just checks which licenses are available in the network, and you want to show the available licenses or show information about the available licenses in your license manager, or you want to perform an online activation maybe in the background. In this case, you also need to access a license, but you don't need to allocate a license. And in this case, you also can use no user limit. So for a license manager or software activation wizard, this is also the standard access mechanism. Last but not least, and the best at last, is station share. Station share is the option that a user can start a software multiple times on the same computer, but it counts only as one. So in my sample, the 10 network licenses on the floating network server, I'm starting my software on the first computer. I'm allocating one license. I'm starting the software on the same computer a second time. It reuses the one already allocated license, and I have still 9 free licenses on my floating network server. When I start on the second machine, of course, it will allocate a second license. So it's a counting per machine. Maybe you will have the question, oh, what happens on a terminal server? And it's quite easy. Every terminal server session, as well as every virtual machine, is counted as a separate computer. And so if a user starts it in a terminal server session, and if a second user starts it in another terminal server session, he needs 2 licenses, or they both need 2 licenses. If one user is starting it twice in one terminal server session, it will count as 1 license. So at the end, it's a real workstation where a user can sit and work. This is counting as 1 machine. So like you expect, or like you should expect how it would work. Next one is the expiration time. It's a time-based feature. And before we come to the expiration time, just a small words about the CodeMeter clock. Every CodeMeter container has an internal real-time clock. It's a virtual real-time clock. And so we call this the system time of the CodeMeter container. And all time-related options are checked against this internal real-time clock. And they have the same concept for the CodeMeter dongles, the CM Act licenses, and of course, as well as the CM Cloud container. And additionally, there's a CM Stick T with an additional battery-operated clock. And let's take a look at the next slide how this works. As mentioned before, in the dongle, we have a secure smart card chip. And this is the secure anchor, and we have the secure clock inside the secure anchor. And so it's not possible to manipulate the clock from outside. But this means the clock only ticks forwards when the smart card chip has power. So if I connect the dongle to the computer, or when I turn on the computer with the connected CodeMeter stick, at this time the clock starts working. And when I remove the dongle, or when I turn off the computer, the clock stops working. To be quite accurate, the clock stops working a few seconds before the power off, but let's say it stops when you remove the dongle. And in this case, when you plug in the dongle again, or when you start the computer again, we have the PC clock as a second source of the time. So we have the stored time in the secure container or in the secure chip. We have the PC clock, and on power on, the firmware in the container will compare both. And if the PC clock is higher, then it will automatically synchronize the internal clock to the newer PC clock. If the PC clock is not newer, in this case, the internal clock will start at the time of the last stored, or of the last power off. And so it will then continue, but there's no way to set the clock back to the past. We can set it to the future, but it's not possible to set the clock back to the past. And as mentioned, when you power it off or remove it, then the time is stored. By the way, for the CM Act license, it's the same. In this case, it's the power on, power off of the computer. So each time when we power off the computer, the last time is stored in the container, and each time when you power on the computer, the last stored time is compared to the PC time and synchronized if the PC time is newer. But what the hell happens if I made a test? In my test, I set a clock to 2050, 2100, something like this, because I want to test how my software works in 50 years, or in 30 years. And in this case, I would synchronize the CodeMeter clock with the future. And so it would also be 2050, and how to get it back to the real time. And for this, we have the WIBU time server. This is operated by us, by WIBU-SYSTEMS. We have 3 in the world, 1 in the US, 1 in Germany, and the second one in France. In the future, also 1 in Asia. And there's an online protocol that we can synchronize the clock of CodeMeter with the WIBU time server. And this sets the clock to the exact time now. And it doesn't matter if the secure clock is in the future or in the past. This will really put the current date into the CodeMeter secure clock. This needs a small online access to reset the clock. And as mentioned, there's a CM stick T, and in the CM stick T, we have an additionally battery operated clock, and this runs also during power off. And so in this case, when we power on the stick, the dongle, we have 3 times. We have the secure clock in the container, we have the PC clock, and we have the additional battery operated clock. And then the firmware checks the highest or the newest of the 3 times, and then synchronizes the secure clock with the latest time from the PC, from the battery operated clock, and from the secure clock in the CodeMeter container. So, and this is how the virtual clock in CodeMeter works. So it works perfectly offline. In case of an error, you have the option to reset it online. And for usage where you say, I want to have a software with a subscription model with a dongle, and the software is used only a few times per month, and the rest, the dongle is not connected to the computer. For this case, the battery operated CM stick T is a very good option. So, and the expiration time is checked against the internal time of the CodeMeter container. So the license is valid until this expiration time, and it is checked against this internal CodeMeter system time. So even if a user resets the time of the computer, if a license is expired, it stays expired. So there's no chance for the user to make it running again by tampering the time of his computer, even with a CM Act license. And for the use of expiration time, there is no internet connection needed. It's just an offline use, so you don't need to connect to the internet. You just put the expiration time to the dongle, and then the rest works automatically. CodeMeter does the rest for you. And let's now come to the next option, to the module items. Carsten, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Rüdiger. So for better level of organization, we saw already the structure of firm code and product codes, but for having more options of structuring our licenses, we will now check how module items work. So to begin with, a module item is basically like a product code inside of a product code. That means that I can define my license options in a certain product code, like in this example, product code number 1000. And inside of this product code, I have all my options, like when my license will expire, and or how many units are there, and so on. And then I can have these nested product items, so my module items, which are inheriting these options from the parent. So I can have, as in this example here, my product codes with the number 201,000 or 201,001, which are specific features that inherit the options of that very product code 1000. The nesting level is 1, which means that we don't nest other product codes inside of this module items. As said, the product item options that I define in this parent can easily be inherited by this other product codes, or let's say features, but I have the chance to partially or on my wishes override certain options inside of this module item itself. For example, I can say that all the modules which are included are having a certain expiration time, but I have an additional module which is inside with an overwritten expiration time, so it will expire earlier. When it comes to activating the license, or let's say the customer view of the license, I would see something like this. So here I can see easily that in this from code 6,000,010, I have my product codes, like my module parents, sample notepad single user and sample notepad evaluation. And nested inside of the single user license, I have two features which are shown here underneath, like the change font module or the hex view module. And now I can, for example, in this view, see that I have a full license, which is this evaluation license, which expires, and the other ones are unlimited. If I would check in the detail, I would find this overview. So inside of this parent, I can find the relation to the module items. So what we see in the upper part is the text that Rüdiger was explaining before already, and the additional information. And therefore, I would give the word to Rüdiger.
Yeah, let's go now to the next option, to the unit counter. And the unit counter is also a number, similar to the license quantity. But in this case, we store usage credits that can be used during runtime. And typically, this is used for prepaid charging. So that means the user buys 100 units for something, and then he can use the 100 units. And when the units are used, he needs to buy more units. And so this can be used for pay-per-use billing. And typically, the counter can be recharged from you as the software vendor via your master dongle. We call this the firm security box. And it can be decremented during runtime with a tamper-proof encryption protocol to make sure that the software really knows that a unit counter was decremented and not simply performs the operation without the unit counter decrement. And the samples for these use cases are, for instance, I have customers which produce printers, and they want to count the amount of printouts. And so every time when a page is printed, they reduce the counter by 1. In this case, they set the counter to 60 million, so the maximum value. And every time when a page is printed, the counter is reduced by 1. And after a month or a year, they check the counter, and the difference, of course, is the amount of printed pages. And so this can be used for this or for driving school software. And in this case, every exam which is executed needs 1 unit. And so if they have enough units, they can make the exam. And if all the units are already used, then they need to go to an online shop and buy more exams. And so the pricing model of this driving school software is not based on you buy it once. You pay just per exam. And last but not least, the last option that we want to show you today is the license transfer. And license transfer in these words means borrowing a license from a network server. Means, let's say, Carsten is a field engineer. I'm his boss, and we have 5, or let's say the 10. Let's continue with the 10. The 10 floating network licenses here in our office. And when Carsten is in the office, he uses a license from the server. But tomorrow he needs to go to a customer, and he needs to use the software also offline when he's on the laptop in the train. And for this, he can borrow a license to his local computer, and then he can continue using this on his local machine without no connection to the network server. And this is a temporary transfer, and so the license in network is marked as in use. And at the local client, it automatically expires. So there is an expiration time set on the license in the local container. And after the expiration at the local client, the license is automatically available on the network server. So it switches back automatically. And let's say Carsten comes back earlier and says, oh, I no longer need a license. Then he can automatically return it before it expires. And so it's earlier back on the server. So this is the way how the license borrowing works. And here let's see a small picture. Usually there is License Central, which is the tool to create licenses, which you can use in the cloud or as an on-premise installation. And the user has a network server and some computers, clients with dongles or soft licenses. In the most use cases, it's the soft license on the client. And then the software is activated, the license activated, so from the License Central transferred to the network server. And then offline, with no connection to License Central, the user can borrow a license from the network server to the local client. The user can return it. And of course, it's also possible to deactivate the license, so to remove it from the network server, put it back to License Central in case you want to rehost the licenses to a second network server because you don't want to use the old network server any longer. And this activation and deactivation is called the license activation. And if you're looking in the manual for the borrow and return, then this is mentioned as license transfer or as offline license transfer, because it's a transfer which happens on the user side without any interaction from you as the ISV. And so there's no interaction needed to transfer licenses between these containers if you allow this in the settings of your software.
So, as a next step, let's have a look on the license models. By the time, there were plenty of possible license models that customers or ourselves came up with. And from this repertoire of different types of license models, we want to have a special look on the following. So let's check single user licenses, demo licenses, borrowable licenses, how it's done, how to configure the options to arrive to network licenses, as well as the famous subscription license, feature in demand, or pay-per-use. So let's start with the single user license. To start with, we'll see up here in the possible configuration fields for defining in which CM container types I can activate this license. So we were talking in the beginning about the firm code and its relation to CM containers. So as we see here, with our universal firm code, for example, this 6.000.010, we can have a container such as SmartBind, which means it's a software container. So it's fixed or related to a machine, or a CM dongle based license or a license container. And with it set up here in the license is able to be activated in those. The next information, or the next important point that we find here, is the product code, which in combination with the firm code, of course, defines the license. And over here we see the product item options. So the first important part is that we see that we have here the action set to add, which means that this license, when being activated, will not replace or override an existing license, but will add it. Then what we also find here is the license quantity being defined with the amount, which is of course the one that we see in the value column. And more important for our actual use case, so the single user license, is the access permission is set to local, which means that it can only be used locally. As Rüdiger mentioned, there is the possibility to add a product text. So that's the text that will be shown to us if we check our license. And as well as the possibility to leave some additional information with the feature map, which can be, for example, for product versioning or setting up certain markers. And what we also can see here is that within the license, we can leave a firm item text, which gives us the possibility to add the ISV name, for example, in our container. So the next license model would be the feature on demand, and therefore I will give the word to Rüdiger.
Okay, so the feature on demand or module licenses. In this case, we define item which would have these module items. And here we say that our product is the module item parent. So it's the name of or the product that we're defining here. And to the product, we can assign different features, which are the child items. And in this case, we say we have a basic feature functionality, which we call the modular sample notepad modular licenses. And we have two additional add-ons or features that we want to activate separately, which is the change font module and the hex view module. And this is what we define in License Central. And let's take a look at the product and the module definition in more detail. And for the product configuration, we see it is very similar to the configuration of the single user license. So we also have the product text, we have the feature map if we want to have versioning, the license quantity. If it is a single user license, we access it or set it to access permissions local and one. We have the sample company as the text for the company. And in this case, we're using one product code for the basic feature. So there's one product code 201000 for the basic feature. And we also set, of course, the product name here. We also see that the container type, so the firm code is defined here. So then now let's go to the feature configuration. And in the feature, we need to set less options. We say this is a module item, so this is a feature. We define the product code for this feature, and we can set, this is optional, a name for the feature, so the feature name. So this is what we need to do for the feature, and the feature automatically inherits all the rest from the product. So it inherits the allowed firm code or the container types and the firm code. It inherits if it is a single user license or floating network license. It inherits if it has an expiration time and so on. And so all the rest are inherited from the product item, also from the parent item. So the next one is the network license and the borrowable license. Let's take this as one topic together. And in this case, the only difference to the single user license is that we set the access now to network instead of the access permission to local. And here we use the same stuff. We say that we don't want to override an existing license. And we want to say that when we sell such a license, the ERP should give us or define the number of seats or amount of seats which a user has purchased. This is one option how to realize floating network licenses. Of course, there are also options where we say we want to override an existing item, want to sell one additional. And in this case, if we model this license like this, we have an ERP system. The user purchases, let's say, a 10 user seats license, and he says, oh, I want to update this. Remember, this 10 user seat license to 11 user seat license. And then the ERP system creates a new order, and in the new order we say now this is 11, or this license has 11 seats, and this license will replace exactly this old license which had 10 seats. And then when the user activates the license, he has now 11 user licenses instead of the 10 user licenses. If my sales model is something else, something like, oh, I'm just selling one additional seat and I don't care if this is the 11th seat or the 5th seat and if it is for this user or this user. In this case, I would use an update add option instead of the action add. And I would then add off the license quantity with a +1 to sell one additional seat. So this depends a little bit of the use cases and workflows. But the major difference is we set it to network and that's it. And we said no borrowing. And so the only option that we need to select is no license transfer. No license transfer standard means no borrowing. And so without activating this, your user cannot shift around the licenses from one container to another container. On the next slide, we see that you as ISV, you can define the options for the borrowing. You need to define the transfer type, which is borrow license, which is the only one which is available in License Central yet. The next one is you can define to which targets the license can be borrowed. In my case, I define it can be borrowed to a CM Act license, to a special one with a special ID, so that I cannot mix borrowed licenses and standard licenses. Of course, you can also borrow it to a CodeMeter dongle or to another Act container, so you can define to which target the user can borrow a license. Next one, you can define the maximum amount of days, how long a user can borrow the license from the network server. And last but not least, there's an option firm item must exist, which depends on your license model with WIBU-SYSTEMS. And so if you have the unlimited license, then you can create unlimited containers. And in this case, the firm item must not exist. You can just create it on the fly. But if you have the license per CodeMeter container, in this case, the license or the container at the end user side needs to have an existing firm item. And so you need to create the license maybe with a registration of the computer, or in case of a dongle, you need to deliver a dongle which is pre-programmed with your firm code, which means the firm item is already there. And then you can transfer licenses, or the user can transfer licenses between these known containers. In the license model, pay per transaction, so where you not pay per container, but you pay per every license that you create. In this case, the license borrowing feature is not available. So and let's take a look now how we configure this at the license, and we see all the rest is the same, and the only thing that we need to change is we need to assign this scheme, the borrow license scheme, to my floating network license, and the rest is exactly the same like we have seen in the picture with the no borrow option. And now borrowing is allowed for this type of license.
So the next licensing model that we will have a look at is the subscription license. So first of all, the subscription license we will explain in 3 different versions, because there are different types how subscriptions are applied from as we've seen and implemented it with our customers. So let's first have a look at a subscription scheme with the renewal triggered by the ERP system. As Rüdiger mentioned before, there is something called on order at the value modification. So we have some parameters that we can define on order, which is the case in this example. So here we have the predefined license, and in the moment of the order, I can hook in with, for example, the ERP system and define the parameters of this expiration time, which means that in fact I can override the value. So in the moment of the order, the ERP system gives the expiration time that is needed. So Typically, it would be the date of the next payment plus a couple of days. Then, for this, also interesting or helpful to use is a product item option, which is called license information, or COLI, which would mean customer-owned license information. And here we see the value modification is on activation. This helps us to store, for example, the ticket itself inside of the license in the moment of the activation, which is of course the right moment for our actual use case that we're looking at, because before we don't know where it is activated. So with this information given inside of the license, I can have a client-side software, for example, a software activation wizard or similar automatic tools, which can check from the existing licenses what ticket they belong to, check with the ticket if there are some updates, and ensure that the client side has the actual status of the license. For example, in the case of an automatic renewal. That means that in this ERP-triggered version, the information that is actual at the client side is always defined by the ERP system. Then we see on the lower part some optional features, which can, of course, still be added as we've seen before. The next version of a subscription model is using automatic renewals. So compared to the previous case that we've checked, here the expiration time is not actively written or triggered continuously by the ERP system, but is predefined as a certain amount of time. So as we see here, for example, we chose the 30th of January, and we also defined 15 seconds, which means that we have automatic magic, let's say, which automatically extends the license once the client side shows up at our license portal or so on, and automatically extends it by 30 days, here seen from 2000 on. And in order to help us with the traffic at the server side, we can define a certain amount of times where it will not respond with in renewal as an option. So we can here define these 15 seconds as a way of saying the first 15 days you're not going to check. This 15 days mean from the last day on backwards, 15 days in advance. It will give the client side the information, okay, here is a possible renewal, so now you can get an update. What we see as an important different configuration is that we here have the value modification on activation, which is of course when the client side is raising the hand to the server. And there is a third version or type of subscriptions, and therefore I will give the word back to Rüdiger.
Yes, let's take a look at the subscription 365. In this case, we want to have something where the user can buy the 365 days anywhere, so maybe at a supermarket or at a retail store. You can buy it at Amazon, or you can buy it from the software vendor themselves. And in this case, we want to model this type of license. And the first thing is this with the different reselling channels only makes sense if I have simple licenses. So let's say this is a product and I want to add just a few more days to the product, but I don't want to change the features inside the product. So because this is too complex and cannot be done via a resales channel. In this case, so that's why I switched this to a default item with no separate features. And of course, we have the product code. And I said, okay, I want to have a license. If the license already exists, it should be updated, and we want to add 365 days. If the license does not exist, we want to create a new license. And that's why I'm using the option update add. And as mentioned before, I want to add 365 days to the existing license, or if the license does not exist, 365 days from the time of the activation of the license. And here it's quite interesting or important to say we want to have a marker for this special subscription license. The marker was already there in all of the licenses, and in this case, this should make sure that when we want to override an existing license, that we have to override the right license. So let's assume that a user has a perpetual license and such subscription license. In this case, of course, the renewal of the subscription should not override the perpetual license or should not override the pay-per-use license. And that's why we want to put a different marker. And the 04 at the beginning is, in this case, the marker that I used for this special subscription license to make sure that we will not override the wrong license in this case.
So for summing up the different types of subscription licensing models, there's to say there's first the ERP triggered one. As we said, or as we saw, the ERP system creates here a new replace order after each payment. So it's fully triggered by the ERP system, and typically the expiration time is the next payment date plus a certain days of tolerance. And next to it we have the automatic renewal, where a software activation wizard renews the licenses automatically, which means that the ERP system just has to trigger the last subscription order in order to stop the automatic renewal.
And for the subscription 365, in this case, the best practice is a simple product structure, so not modular or feature-based licenses. And a flexible renewal via all sales channels is possible in this case. So maybe via their own e-commerce solution, maybe via Amazon, via a local retailer. And in this case, the expiration at the first activation, the expiration time is set to the activation date plus 365 days. And if the license already exists, then the existing license is extended by another 365 days. Last but not least, the pay-per-use license. And the pay-per-use license is very similar to our Office 365 license, by the way. We're using a default item, so no separate features. And we're using the product code, we're using update add, so we extend the license if it exists. And here, instead of using the additional days, we say we want to have a unit counter and we want to add just 100 units. So let's say this is the 100 unit item. We want to add 100 units to the existing license. In this case, as mentioned before, also the product marker should be interesting or is interesting, important, because we don't want to override a pay-per-use license with a subscription license and a subscription license with a pay-per-use license in this case. And pay-per-use. So the application, of course, needs to count the actions, and the actions could be a number of starts, could be the time that the application is running in minutes, for instance, or could be a click or execution of a function, so like the creation of the exam for my driving school software. And the first two things can be approached with either CodeMeter Protection Suite or the CodeMeter Core API. The last one, the clicks, needs to be implemented by your software developer by the CodeMeter core API, because we know, or we don't know, X-Protector cannot know when does the user click one button or when is which function executed, and that's why you need to implement this via the core API. And also, like the activation of the 365 license, the first activation creates a new license, and the following activations simply add the units to the current value of the existing license. So meaning I have 100 licenses or 100 units purchased, I use 50. I'm buying next 100, and then I'm adding the 100 to the existing one, so I have 150 now remaining in my license. Simple mathematics. Last but not least, trial licenses, and back to Carsten.
Thank you, Rüdiger. So what is the difference then to a simple evaluation license? Well, we will check the use case that we have one evaluation license, including all features and modules. That means that we, of course, choose as an item type a default type, so no modules, and have a certain product code defined here that gives us the access to all the features. We add it to the container so that it's laying next to the others, so we don't override another product code. And the important part here is now the expiration time, which is added with a value of 30 days from activation. That means that once I activate this license, I will have 30 days until my evaluation license with all the features expires. Looking at the license itself, it can look also like this when I will choose to get individual features. So now we have an evaluation license where I will maybe just the individuals have as an evaluation. So we have the same configuration for the parent item, and underneath we have module items which are inheriting this expiration time from the parent. So additionally to our basic licenses, I herewith can achieve these optional features being available for 30 days as evaluation licenses.
Yeah, and last but not least of our session today are pitfalls and false friends. We have seen a lot of best practice tips how to realize license models using the CodeMeter product item options. And I got a few questions sometimes about 3 options, usage period. And the question is, I want to use usage period for the Office 360 or for the subscriptions 365. And you're seeing that I'm used the expiration time. I use the relative expiration time, which said I want to add the 365 days, either from the activation from now, or I want to add it to an existing license. And the reason why I'm using this is CodeMeter License Central cannot renew an already started usage period. And CodeMeter License Central does not know when it expires. So a usage period stops when the software starts, not at the activation. Usually it's the same time, but License Central cannot guess that it's the same time. And so I give you a usage period, or I give Carsten a usage period of 365 days. And so if I'm in my reporting, when I want to know when does Carsten's license expire, when should I send him a marketing email like, oh, your license expires? In case of usage period, I never know if it really expires because I only know it was activated, but I don't know when it was started. And with the relative expiration time, I have all the information for my marketing, and it's easy to renew or to extend an existing expiration time with 365 days, or of course with each other value. The second option that we don't use very often is activation time. And activation time is something where the user needs to be online. So it's not a time when the license was activated, it's the time when the license should start working. And usually it's the same, so you don't need a separate activation time. And the activation time needs to be, or the user needs to be online once after the time when the activation time was reached, and then the license starts working. I don't see I don't saw a real use case in the 20 years that I'm working for WIBU now. So my recommendation is don't use the activation time at all. And last but not least is the feature map. It sounds like, oh, I can use this for my feature licensing. And what we have seen, and we explained this, and Carsten showed us that we can use the product items with the module items, or with the nested product items, which is the same as a module item, just a different name. That we use this module items instead of the feature map, because with module items, we can have everything. We can have unlimited, let's say, the 2,000 different features in one container. With the feature map, we are limited to 32 bits, so 32 features. With a module item, we can inherit all the options from the parent, or we can override them. With a feature map, we have no different license quantity. It automatically inherits it because there is no parent and no feature. It is just a bit in the feature map, and so you cannot have a different expiration time or a different license quantity for something. And it's also not so quite straightforward to activate or remove features from a feature map, and that's why using the module items instead is definitely a good way to realize feature-based licensing instead of using a feature map. I saw in the chat there were already a few questions. One question I saw was about can I connect the CodeMeter cloud license to my OpenID single sign-on? Yes, you can do this. So in terms of the CodeMeter cloud license, there's a credential file which can be stored in a license portal, and the license portal is a flexible application which can be connected to any single sign-on solution. We can connect it to a SAML-based, to a SOAP-based solution. We can connect this to SAP. We can connect this, of course, to OpenID. And then your user will log in with your credentials to our license portal, and license portal does the communication in the background with the CodeMeter cloud server. And so at the end, it's not a direct connection with the OpenID or with your single sign-on. It's a connection from license portal to the cloud, and from your OpenID to license portal. And so at the end, you can connect your OpenID to a license in the cloud. A second question was, can I use a different product code for the module item and for the product item parent? Yes, I guess this question was before we explained it. And so, yes, of course, you can have one product code for the parent, and you can have a different product code for every module. In our case, we use the 201,000 for the parent, and the 201,001 for the change font module, and the 201,002 for the hex view module. I'm just checking if there are more questions in the chat. There are no more questions, so I would say thank you for your time here, and hope to see you soon again in the next webinar. Bye-bye, have a nice day.
Bye also from me, and hope to hear and see you soon. Bye.